Saturday afternoon, 3:18 p.m. 23 people in my living room, my daughter's 7th birthday. Pink balloons, a cake with 7 candles, my mother, my mother-in-law, my sister, aunts and uncles and cousins and neighbors. Everyone gathered around Ella, 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, her party dress, pale yellow, her choice, she had been very specific about the pale yellow. We lit the candles, we sang, and then, before she blew them out, Ella did what Ella always does. She closed her eyes, she thought very hard, and then she opened them, and she said her wish out loud, because Ella has always said her wishes out loud. She believes with complete 7-year-old certainty that saying a wish out loud makes it more powerful. So she said it, in front of 23 people, in front of my mother and my mother-in-law and my sister and all the aunts and uncles and cousins and neighbors, in front of me, in front of my husband. She said, "I wish Daddy doesn't have to go help the crying neighbor lady at night anymore, and he can just sleep in his own bed." 23 people. Complete silence. I looked at my husband. His face told me everything. My name is Laura Calloway. I am 33 years old, and my 7-year-old daughter announced the end of my marriage at her own birthday party, without knowing that's what she was doing. My name is Laura Calloway. I am 33 years old. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, the south end of the city, the neighborhoods that are quieter and older than the downtown that has been building and rebuilding itself for the past decade. My parents have lived in the same house on the same street for 30 years. My mother planted the same roses every spring. My father fixed things himself rather than calling anyone on principle, which meant some things stayed broken longer than they should have. I am their middle child, between my older sister, Kate, who is 36 and lives 12 minutes away, and my younger brother, Danny, who is 29 and lives in Atlanta and calls on Sundays. I have been in Charlotte my whole life. I met Tom Calloway at 25. He was 28. He worked in commercial lending, the kind of finance that is behind the scenes of construction and development, the money that makes buildings happen before anyone moves in. He was from Charlotte, too, different part of the city, the North End, but the same city, the same particular loyalty to a place that some people find limiting and that we had both separately decided was simply home. He was steady. That was the word I always used. Steady. The kind of man who showed up when he said he would and meant what he said, and was present in a way that I had, before Tom, not fully understood was a specific quality rather than just the baseline of how relationships worked. I was wrong about several things. We got married at 27. Ella was born the following year. She is 7 now. She is the kind of child that makes every room better, not through performance or effort, but through some quality of presence that she was born with, and that I hope she never loses. She asks questions constantly, she has opinions about everything and expresses them clearly, and is open to being wrong, which is, I think, the most useful qualities a person can have. She says her wishes out loud because she believes it makes them more powerful. She has believed this since she was 4 years old, and I have never corrected it because I cannot think of a good reason to. On the Saturday of her 7th birthday, she said her wish in front of 23 people, and she was not wrong. It was very powerful. I need to tell you about Diane. Diane Marsh is 41 years old. She moved into the apartment directly below ours 14 months ago. She had recently been widowed. Her husband had died of a sudden cardiac event, which was the phrase used in the sympathy card that our building's management sent around, the specific clinical euphemism for a 43-year-old man dying without warning and leaving behind a wife and a mortgage and a life that had to be entirely reorganized. I had felt terrible for her. I had brought meals down twice in the first 2 weeks. Tom had helped her with a broken window latch that she couldn't figure out. We had been in the particular way of neighbors who want to be decent human beings, as helpful as we could without overstepping. Diane was, I want to say this honestly because I think it matters, she was not a villain. She was a 41-year-old widow who was grieving and alone and vulnerable in the specific way that acute grief makes people vulnerable. What happened was wrong, but she is not the simplest version of the story. What I knew about Diane before the birthday party: she lived downstairs, she was a widow, she was quiet, she had a small terrace garden she tended carefully. She sometimes knocked on our door to borrow small things, a cup of flour once, a specific kind of tape another time. She and Tom had struck up the kind of neighbor friendliness that is warm without being close. What I did not know, that the neighbor friendliness had become something else, that Tom had been going downstairs at night, that Ella, who is 7 and believes in the power of wishes, had decided that her father was being a good and helpful neighbor and his nighttime absences were acts of charity toward a grieving woman. Children see everything. They simply interpret it through the framework they have available. Ella's framework was kindness. She did not have the framework for what it actually was. The party had been planned for weeks. Not elaborate. I am not an elaborate party person, and Ella, to my relief, had inherited this. She wanted cake and balloons and the people she loved in the same room. That was, she said, the whole point. We had the living room rearranged, balloons from the party store on the corner, a cake from the bakery 4 blocks away, chocolate with vanilla frosting because that is what Ella always wants, and she's consistent about it. 23 people in our living room. My mother and my mother-in-law sitting next to each other on the couch with the particular comfortable coexistence of 2 women who have been at the same family events for 8 years and have arrived at a warm neutrality. My sister Kate, who had brought her husband and their 2 kids, Tom's brother Michael and his wife, my aunt and uncle from Concord, neighbors, the parents of 2 of Ella's school friends who had come with their daughters. Tom was next to me when we sang. His voice, I have heard him sing Happy Birthday many times, the same slightly off-key version every time, the same good-natured disregard for pitch. We sang. Ella squeezed her eyes shut. I could see it, the specific concentration of a child taking a wish seriously. And then she opened her eyes, and she said it. I will tell you what I felt in the moment after, because it is not what people might expect. I did not feel anger immediately. I felt cold, the specific cold of comprehension, of a sentence landing and being understood not just linguistically, but structurally. The cold of a building's foundation shifting. I looked at Tom. He was not looking at Ella. He was looking at the floor. And in the not looking, in the specific deliberate quality of a man looking at the floor at the moment he should have been looking at his daughter, I had my answer. 23 people in a living room. Complete silence. Ella was looking at the candles, waiting to blow them out. She did not understand why no one was saying anything. She looked up. She looked around the room. "Did I say it wrong?" she said. My mother, and I love my mother for this, I will love her for this for the rest of my life, said immediately and warmly, "You said it perfectly, sweetheart. Now blow out those candles before the wax strips." Ella blew out the candles. Everyone clapped. This specific muscle memory of a birthday party, cake, singing, candles, clapping, carried us through the next 30 seconds on its own momentum. I cut the cake. My mother helped me cut the cake. Kate appeared at my elbow and poured lemonade without being asked, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and in the look was everything that would be said later, and nothing that needed to be said right now. 23 people ate cake. The children ran back to Ella's room to play. The adults talked in the careful, surface-level way of people who have collectively agreed not to address something that everyone is aware of and no one is ready to name. Tom was across the room. He did not come near me for the rest of the party. The last guest left at 6:15. My mother hugged me at the door. She held me for a moment longer than a normal goodbye hug. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Kate hugged me too. "Call me," she said quietly. "Tonight, whenever, I'll answer." Tom's mother, I watched her leave, trying to read her face, and what I found there was something I had not expected. Not surprise, not the shock of a woman hearing something for the first time. Something older than surprise. The specific expression of someone who has known something and has been waiting, with dread, for the moment that everyone else would know it too. I filed that away. The door closed. Ella was in her room, surrounded by her birthday things, talking to her stuffed animals about which ones were invited to the real party she was throwing for them. I stood in the living room. Tom stood in the kitchen doorway. We looked at each other across the space of our apartment, and I said, "Not tonight." Just that. He nodded. He went to the bedroom. I stayed in the living room. I sat on the couch. I listened to Ella talk to her stuffed animals, and I thought about everything I needed to do tomorrow. Sunday morning. Ella woke up still in her birthday energy, the specific residual joy of a 7-year-old who has been celebrated the day before and is not finished with it. She wanted pancakes. I made pancakes. Tom came downstairs at 8:30. He sat at the table. He ate with us. He was careful. The specific careful of a man who does not know what the rules are right now and is being very still to avoid finding out. After breakfast, Ella went to her room. Tom and I sat at the table. "How long?" I said. A pause. "Laura?" "How long, Tom?" He looked at the table. 7 months, he said. 7 months. Ella had been 6 years old 7 months ago. She had been noticing, for some portion of those 7 months, that her father was going downstairs at night. She had interpreted it as kindness, because she is 7 years old and kindness is the framework she has. "She's been watching you," I said. "She knew your schedule." He did not say anything. "She thought you were helping her," I said. "She thought it was something to be proud of. She made it her birthday wish." "Laura, I'm not doing this today," I said. "I'm going to call Kate. You're going to stay here with Ella, and tomorrow morning I'm calling an attorney." He looked up. "I want to explain. I know you do, but Ella needs a normal Sunday, and I need one day before I do anything that can't be undone." I called Kate. I went to Kate's house. I left Tom with Ella and her birthday aftermath and the stuffed animal party that was still ongoing. Kate's kitchen. Sunday afternoon. She made tea. She sat across from me. She already knew everything. She had been in the room. She had seen Tom's face. She had read the situation with the specific competence of an older sister who has been reading situations for 36 years. "Tell me," she said. I told her. 7 months, Diane, the nighttime absences, Ella watching, Ella interpreting. She listened to all of it. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mom knows." I looked at her. "She knew something," Kate said. "Maybe not specifically, but she's known something was wrong for a while. She mentioned it to me in August. She said Tom seemed distracted. I told her she was imagining it." "August," I said. 5 months ago," Kate said. 2 months into it. I sat with that. "Tom's mother," I said slowly, "when she left last night, her face, she wasn't surprised." Kate looked at her tea. "She knew?" "I think," Kate said carefully, "that she suspected and didn't know what to do with it." I thought about my mother-in-law, Patricia Calloway, 62 years old, a woman I had liked for 8 years, a woman who had been at my daughter's birthday party and had watched her granddaughter say that wish, and had known some version of it. "I'm calling an attorney tomorrow," I said. "I'll come with you," Kate said, simply, the way older sisters say things. "Okay," I said. The attorney's name was Helen Marsh. No relation to Diane,
The name was simply a coincidence that I noticed and set aside because I did not have the capacity to give it attention. Helen's office was downtown. Tuesday morning, Kate had taken the day off, Ella was at school, Tom was at work. The specific, temporary structure of a life that is about to change, but has not changed yet. Helen was 50, precise, the kind of attorney who conveys competence not through drama, but through the specific quality of someone who has seen everything and is not surprised by any of it. I told her what had happened: the 7 months, the neighbor, the birthday party, the wish. She listened. When I finished, she said, "The birthday party detail. Are there witnesses?" I said, 23. Something that might have been, in a different context, a small smile. Not unkind. "All right," she said. "Let's talk about what you want." What I wanted. The apartment. It was in my name before the marriage, an inheritance from my grandmother, converted to joint after we married. Helen told me the conversion and the length of the marriage meant it would be subject to equitable distribution, but that the original ownership history was relevant. Primary custody of Ella. Tom could be in her life, he was her father and she loved him, and I was not going to take him from her, but she came home to me. Financial transparency, Helen's word, on everything that had been spent in the past 7 months. The nights downstairs had presumably involved other expenditures. I wanted to know what they were. "What about Diane?" Helen asked. I thought about it. "She's not my problem," I said. "She's a widow who made a bad choice. Tom is my problem." Helen nodded. "Then let's proceed," she said. "I need to tell you about the conversation with Tom's mother. It happened on a Wednesday, 4 days after the birthday party. Patricia called me. Not Tom, me. She asked if she could come over. I said yes. She arrived at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Ella was at school, Tom was at work. Just the two of us in the kitchen. She sat down. She said, "I owe you an apology." I waited. She said, "I saw something in August at Ella's school pickup. You remember, you and Tom were both busy, and afterward, Tom suggested we stop to drop something off at a neighbor's. He said it was someone who needed help, and she answered the door. Diane." "I didn't know her name," Patricia said. "I just saw the way they looked at each other. And then I told myself I was imagining it, and then I told myself it wasn't my place. And then I told myself that marriages are complicated and Tom would figure it out." "You didn't tell me," I said. "No," she said, "I didn't." She looked at her hands. "Laura," she said, "I have been wrong about a lot of things in my life, but I have never been more wrong about anything than not telling you. I told myself I was staying out of my son's marriage. What I was actually doing was leaving you in something without the information you needed to make your own choices." I looked at her. "If you had told me in August," I said slowly, "that would have been 5 months earlier." "I know," she said. Her voice broke slightly on the second word. We sat in the kitchen for a long time. At the end of it, I said, "I appreciate you coming. I don't know what this looks like going forward. I need time to figure that out, but I appreciate you coming. I'll do whatever you need," she said. "Whatever helps Ella, whatever helps you. I'll let you know," I said. She left. I sat in the kitchen, and I thought about a 7-year-old closing her eyes in front of a birthday cake, thinking very hard, saying her wish out loud because she believes it makes it more powerful.
Tom and I had the full conversation on Thursday evening. Ella was at Kate's, a sleepover with her cousins, arranged by Kate with the specific logistical skill of an older sister who understands when children need to be somewhere else. Just Tom and me in the apartment. I had thought about what I wanted to know and what I didn't want to know. What I wanted to know, how it had started, whether it was still happening, whether he had ever intended to tell me. What I didn't want to know, the specific details, the texture of it, the things that would live in my head in ways that weren't useful. I asked what I wanted to know. He answered. It had started in December. Diane had knocked on our door late one evening, genuinely distressed, a difficult anniversary related to her husband's death.
Tom had gone down to check on her, and then he had gone back. It was not still happening. He said he had ended it in June, 2 months before Patricia had seen something at school pickup. He said he had told himself after June that it was over and that he would figure out how to manage it. He had not managed it. He simply waited. And in the waiting, Ella had been watching. Had he intended to tell me? He was quiet for a long time. "I don't know," he said finally. I think I was waiting for a version of the situation where telling you didn't have to happen." "That version doesn't exist," I said. "He knows that now," he said. I stood up. "Helen Marsh will be in contact with your attorney. Her information is on the counter." I went to bed. I lay in the dark, and I thought about a wish said out loud and about how powerful it had turned out to be. The divorce took 5 months. 5 months of the specific procedural reality of dismantling a shared life. The apartment, the finances, the custody arrangement, the 100 small decisions that accumulate into the architecture of 2 people who are no longer one thing, but have to remain connected because of the child they made together. I will not take you through all of it. What I will tell you is the shape of it. The apartment, Helen had been right that the equitable distribution conversation was complicated by the original ownership history. We settled on a buyout. Tom paid me the equivalent of his share of the appreciated value, and I kept the apartment. I kept Ella's room exactly as it was. I kept the kitchen with the morning light. The finances, 3 months of expenditures related to Diane were documented and factored into the settlement. Not punishingly, Helen had advised against using it as a weapon, and I had agreed, because weapons have a way of injuring the person holding them as much as the target, but documented, acknowledged, part of the record. Custody, primary with me. Tom had Ella every other weekend and Wednesday evenings for dinner. The arrangement was Ella-centered, built around her school schedule, her activities, her need to have both parents present in her life without being caught between them. Tom agreed to everything. He did not fight any of it. Whether this was guilt or love for Ella or some combination of both, I cannot say with certainty. What I can say is that he showed up for every custody negotiation and agreed to every term, and has, in the 8 months since the divorce was finalized, been present and consistent for Ella in the ways that matter. He is a better co-parent than he was a husband. That is a complicated thing to hold. I hold it anyway. Ella asked about Diane once. Not right away. Children process things at their own pace, in their own time, and Ella had been given the age-appropriate version of events, that Mommy and Daddy had decided they were better as 2 separate families than one family together, and that they both loved her exactly the same amount, and that would never change. She had accepted this with the specific pragmatic resilience of a child who trusts the adults who love her. She had asked in the weeks after the questions that children ask. Would she have to change schools? No. Would she still see Grandma Patricia? Yes. Could she bring her stuffed animals to Daddy's new apartment? Of course. She had not for several months asked about her birthday wish. And then, one evening, a Tuesday in February, 4 months after the party, she was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, and she looked up and she said, "Mom, my birthday wish." I looked at her. "Did it come true?" she said. I thought about what to say. "Which part of it?" I said carefully. She thought about it. "The part where Daddy sleeps in his own bed," she said. "He has his own apartment now, so he sleeps in his own bed." "Yes," I said, "that part came true." She considered this. "Good," she said. "I told you saying it out loud makes it more powerful." She went back to her homework. I stood at the counter for a moment. "You were right," I said. She looked up and grinned, the gap-toothed smile, the pale yellow party dress long since outgrown. "I know," she said. The family reorganized itself the way families do when something large moves through them. My mother, who had hugged me at the door without saying anything, who had known something was wrong since August without being able to name it, became in the months after the birthday party the most present she had been in my adult life. Not intrusively, not with advice I hadn't asked for, just present, available, a specific kind of maternal support that does not announce itself but is simply there when you reach for it. My mother-in-law, Patricia, and I have arrived at something. Not what we were, the warm relationship of a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law who genuinely liked each other. What we were is gone, or at least changed into something that requires more care than it used to, but something. She comes to Ella's school events. She calls on Ella's birthday. She has said more than once that she is sorry, and she has said it in the specific way of someone who is not looking for absolution, but simply acknowledging a truth. I have not given her absolution. I have given her something more limited and more honest, the acknowledgement that she is Ella's grandmother, and that Ella loves her, and that this is enough to work with. It is enough to work with. Kate has remained exactly what she has always been, the older sister who shows up and stays and does not require me to be performing recovery at any particular pace. She came to every attorney meeting. She drove me home when I needed to be driven. She said very little and was present constantly. That is the definition of a good sister. Diane moved out of the building 4 months after the birthday party. I do not know where she went. I do not know if Tom knows where she went. I do not think it matters for the purposes of my life whether I know or not. What I do know is that her terrace garden, the one she tended carefully, the small, organized square of plants that I used to notice from our window above, was cleared out by building management in the spring. New tenant, new plants. I noticed one morning, looking down. Someone else's garden now. I thought about Diane for a moment. Not with anger. Anger requires energy that I decided at some point in the months of the divorce I was not going to give her specifically. She is a person who made a bad choice in a period of grief and vulnerability. She is also a person who participated in something that hurt me and Ella. Both things are true. I do not need to resolve them into a single feeling. I looked at the new plants. Someone had planted basil and tomatoes, the optimistic spring planting of a person who believes in the possibility of a good harvest. I turned away from the window. I went to make breakfast for Ella.